The bitter wind howls across the frozen landscape as snow begins to fall heavily on the Eurasian steppe. Temperatures have dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. And for the next 6 months, this land will be locked in winter's grip. A modern human would last perhaps hours in these conditions without proper shelter and heating. Yet 30,000 years ago, entire families of cavemen not only survived, but thrived through winters like this, raising children and creating some of humanity's most sophisticated art. They had no heated blankets, no insulated sleeping bags, no thermostats to adjust in the middle of the night. So how did caveman ancestors sleep through the harshest winters in human history without freezing to death in their sleep? The popular image of early humans during ice ages usually involves huddling around fires in the mouths of caves. But this picture is woefully incomplete. Archaeological evidence reveals that these ancient peoples developed sleeping technologies so effective that they enabled human expansion into the most challenging environments on Earth. The story begins with a simple but revolutionary realization. When nature tries to kill you in your sleep, you make nature work for you instead. At Kostenki in Russia, dating to 25,000 years ago, researchers discovered remains of sleeping areas that reveal extraordinary attention to thermal efficiency during rest. These early Arctic peoples understood something crucial. The ground itself was their enemy during sleep. Without insulation from below, body heat would drain into the frozen earth, leading to hypothermia and death within hours. The first layer, placed directly on the ground, consisted of thick beds of dried grasses and sedges, packed densely to create an insulating barrier. Analysis of compressed plant materials shows these grass beds were often 12 to 18 inches thick, deliberately chosen for maximum thermal resistance. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologists working at a site dating to 26,000 years ago uncovered evidence that revolutionized understanding of Ice Age sleeping technology. The sleeping platforms incorporated multiple material layers, each serving a specific thermal function. Above the grass foundation, these Paleolithic peoples placed carefully prepared animal hides, with the fur side facing upward. Reindeer hides were particularly prized. Scanning electron microscopy revealed that the hair shafts are hollow, filled with air pockets that provide exceptional insulation while allowing moisture from sleeping bodies to escape. Wolf and bear pelts were layered on top, their dense underfur creating additional thermal barriers. At sleeping sites across the Ice Age world, archaeologists have found evidence of prehistoric sleeping bags. At Sunghir in Russia, dating to 34,000 years ago, researchers discovered a burial that provided remarkable insights. The individual had been buried wrapped in a carefully constructed hide envelope, sewn together with animal sinew. The stitching patterns showed remarkable attention to eliminating air gaps where warmth could escape. Double-seam construction created wind-proof barriers. Bone needles recovered from the same site, some as fine as modern sewing needles, demonstrated the precision of this textile work. The most famous examples come from the mammoth bone houses of Ukraine and Russia. At Mezherik in Ukraine, discovered in 1965, archaeologists uncovered 4 structures dating to approximately 15,000 years ago. Inside, these mammoth bone houses revealed distinct sleeping areas that showcased sophisticated approaches to cold weather rest. The sleeping area occupied the southern section of the dwelling, positioned to capture maximum radiant heat from the central hearth while avoiding smoke accumulation. Analysis showed that sleeping platforms were elevated approximately 6 to 8 inches above the floor, creating an air gap that provided additional insulation from ground cold. The warmest spots, closest to the fire but protected from sparks by carefully positioned mammoth shoulder blades, showed the highest concentration of small bone fragments and milk teeth. This suggested these premium sleeping locations were reserved for infants and young children who were most vulnerable to cold during sleep. But the fire presented a dangerous problem. A fire hot enough to keep people warm during waking hours would consume fuel too quickly to last through an entire night. Let the fire die completely, and everyone could freeze before morning. At Kostenki 11, excavated between 1936 and 1974, archaeologists found evidence of how Paleolithic peoples solved this problem. The site contained two distinct types of hearths. Large, shallow hearths were used for cooking and activities during waking hours. Smaller, deeper hearths, positioned near sleeping areas, contained different residue patterns. Chemical analysis revealed combustion signatures consistent with slow, smoldering fires rather than open flames. At Shivering, examination of hearth contents showed cavemen created fuel briquettes from mammoth dung mixed with dried grasses and small bone fragments. Experimental archaeology conducted by researchers at the University of Kansas demonstrated that these fuel mixtures could smolder for 8 to 10 hours while producing steady heat with minimal smoke. Perhaps the most ingenious aspect was discovered at Kostenki 1, excavated extensively between 2000 and 2010. Archaeologists found fire-altered stones positioned in a ring around the sleeping area, separate from the main hearths. Microscopic analysis revealed thermal stress patterns consistent with heating to temperatures between 400 and 600 degrees Fahrenheit, then slow cooling over many hours. Experimental reconstructions demonstrated that large stones, placed in day fires until thoroughly heated, then wrapped in layers of hide and grass, these stones could radiate useful warmth for 6 to 8 hours when positioned around sleeping areas. This carried sleepers through the coldest parts of the night when fires burned lowest. The social organization of sleeping arrangements revealed fascinating patterns. Analysis of wear patterns at sites like Dolny Vestonice, Dolny Vestonetse, indicated that 8 to 12 individuals regularly slept in close proximity. Adult-sized depressions in sleeping surfaces occurred on the periphery of sleeping areas, while smaller depressions created by children appeared in central positions. Thermal imaging studies of experimental reconstructions at the University of Liège, LIEZH in Belgium, showed that when 8 people slept in close proximity using Ice Age bedding materials, the temperature in the center of the sleeping group could be 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the ambient shelter temperature. Moisture management during sleep was another challenge that archaeological evidence shows Paleolithic peoples solved with sophistication. At Pavlov in the Czech Republic, excavations uncovered sleeping areas with distinct layering. Below the sleeping furs, archaeologists found thick deposits of dried moss and lichen. Laboratory analysis revealed the moss species, primarily sphagnum and polytrichum, possess extraordinary moisture absorption properties. These materials can absorb up to 20 times their weight in water. Together, these materials absorbed moisture from sleeping bodies and transported it away from sleeping surfaces, while preventing the growth of mold and bacteria. At Kostenki 14, excavated between 2005 and 2012, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery. Preserved in permafrost conditions, they found fragments of what appeared to be a child's sleeping cover. The hide had been sewn into an envelope shape using sinew thread with extraordinary precision. Stitch spacing was remarkably uniform, approximately 5 millimeters apart. Most remarkably, one edge showed signs of deliberate modification. A series of small holes, reinforced with bone rings, appeared to create a closure system using leather thongs. This was an adjustable sleeping bag, designed to be tightened, or loosened. The thermal efficiency of caveman sleeping arrangements has been tested through experimental archaeology. In 2015, researchers at the University of Tübingen constructed replicas using materials and techniques documented from archaeological sites. Test subjects spent nights in a climate-controlled chamber set to -15 degrees Fahrenheit. The results were remarkable. Core body temperatures remained stable throughout 8-hour sleep periods. The heated stones maintained useful warmth for approximately 7 hours. Modern synthetic sleeping bags, rated for similar temperatures, performed comparably but not superior to the ancient system. The techniques developed for winter sleeping had profound impacts on human expansion into frozen regions. Analysis of ancient DNA shows that human populations expanded into Arctic and subarctic regions during the last glacial maximum, between 26,000 and 19,000 years ago. Sites like Yana, RHS, in the Arctic. Siberia, dating to 32,000 years ago, represents the northernmost human occupation during the Ice Age. The discovery of sleeping area features at this extreme latitude demonstrated that the sleeping technologies developed further south had been successfully adapted for even harsher conditions. The story of how cavemen slept through Ice Age winters is ultimately documented in thousands of years of archaeological evidence from dozens of sites across the northern hemisphere. Faced with conditions that should have killed them in their sleep, these ancient peoples developed technologies that allowed them not just to survive, but to rest comfortably enough to thrive during the harshest winters in human history. The evidence points not to primitive cave dwellers, but to accomplished survival specialists. The next time someone climbs into a warm bed or zips up a sleeping bag, the principles keeping them comfortable were first developed by cavemen, who conquered the challenge of sleeping through winter nights with nothing but animal skins, heated stones, and the collective warmth of their families. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the ancient world with us.